And we got a few things to go over. One of them is the payout scale. So we mentioned in the chat, in the Discord, that we're going to make an adjustment to the payout scale. And there's a couple reasons behind this. Number one is we want to cut out layers and complexity and make it more streamlined. The more streamlined, the better. We don't want to have multiple people dropping the ball. One of the challenges that we've run into is that PF will pass it off to AM, and perhaps that's not getting picked up. And the idea is, we have a smooth flow from one person to the next. And the more layers we can, the easier the flow, the better. So what we're cutting out is the team manager position and redistributing the percentages. So as far as property finder, we're also, another change that we had made is that there was the opportunity for a property finder not to have to do the initial offer and let the AM do it. But what that means is that property finder was doing less work and the AM was doing more work. And we want to try to make things equalized, especially that, an AM is actually, the person that's more skilled and more experienced. And so they need to be compensated for that. So what we're doing is taking that position of property finder, and we would like everybody to be able to do the whole thing. But if you're not capable enough, you're just starting out, you don't feel confident, then you can just do the first part of it and then let the AM pick up on the rest of it. So basically, in the world of wholesale, you typically have a lead generation, and sometimes it's called a bird dog, and they'll go out and they'll find a property. They'll do a small amount of initial research, but they don't have to do any underwriting. They don't have to figure out how much the value of it is, how much it's going to cost to repair it. They don't have to negotiate at all. They don't have to make the first offer. And that lead generator usually gets is in the range of 5%. So what we're going to do is break out the property finder into two separate categories. One that does the whole thing and one that does just the lead gen portion of it. So instead of the 11%, the whole thing is now going to be 13%. If you're not doing the portion of it of doing the underwriting, finding how much it's worth, the ARV, and calculating out the repair costs and making that initial offer, then it's only 5%. If you're doing the whole thing, it's 13%. What we really would like is that all of the property finders do the whole thing. And we're going to break this out a little bit different in that with this go for no method, number one, you do not have to have the skills to get it exact. The whole idea of the go for no method is that you're giving them a very low offer. You're going for the no because it's a low ball offer. And with a low ball offer, there's plenty of room for error. The key behind the low ball, the go for no method, is that you build a solid rapport, and then you take that rapport and you use it in your favor through the negotiating process. So the less hands that it has to go through, the better.
That ain't changing nothing.
Well, if you would have checked and make sure I had brake
No,
fluid.
I could have did that at the house. Put brake fluid in the car.
Okay, do we got brake fluid?
You might.
So, sorry, Curtis, I just muted you there. So, if you need to speak up to say something, we welcome comments, but let me just work through this for a minute. So the idea is that the person that puts in that initial lowball 50% go for no offer, they don't have to be super accurate. They calculate out the ARV, they run the comps, they do the guesstimate of the repairs, and then they take that ARV minus the repairs and just cut it in half, 50%. That's the initial offer. So the building of rapport is very important, because if you don't build rapport, then they're just going to view you as another lowball offer. So the idea is that they feel confident with you enough that you can reach out after you get the no and request the counteroffer. So that rapport element is extremely important. And that's why we would like the property finder to stay with that property. The idea here is that they don't need to be experts. Property finders don't need to be experts, but they've built that rapport and they can maintain that rapport. The acquisition manager, in order for this not to lose its flow and its connection, the rapport that's already developed, when they go back for the counteroffer, the actual property finder can pursue the counteroffer. They've already built the rapport. So go for the counteroffer. And when you get that counteroffer, then you can say, let me check with my acquisition manager. Let me check with my underwriter. I don't know if we can do that. Let me get with my underwriter. And now you can still keep that rapport going. And this is one thing that Pace does, and he recommends it, is that you push off the bad guy to the underwriter job, to somebody else. Well, let me go check. I'd like to do that. I don't know if I can. I need to go ask somebody else. And that somebody else, they become a bad guy, and you still maintain that rapport. You still maintain that good relationship that you have already built. So the AM role, instead of them having to hop on the call and start from scratch and understanding the situation, instead of them perhaps dropping the ball, when it tries to get transferred from one person to the next, the property finder can just keep the ball. They can put in that initial lowball offer, the 50% go for no offer, then request the counteroffer. When they get the counteroffer, then say, let me check with my underwriter, and then go check with your AM. And the AM can run the numbers a little bit tighter to see exactly where we can be, and then provide a counteroffer that tell you what to counteroffer back. So the PF can actually maintain that rapport, be in the middle of it, but not be worried about, are my numbers right? Because the AM will be there to support them and give them the right numbers and tell them what to say back to the agent or to the seller. If you're doing on market, it would be agent. If you're doing off market, it would be seller. So you can maintain that rapport. You don't have to worry about, is the AM picking it up? Are they doing their job? I've done all this work and I don't know if it's being followed up on. Now you can follow up on it. You can keep that flow happening that you've already developed, and depend on the acquisition manager to be able to provide that the underwriting support that you need to get that counteroffer back to them after they counteroffered to you. So as far as the AM role, it's very similar to what it was, except now the AM role doesn't have to go out there and actually pick up the ball from the PF. They can simply, when the PF calls them or texts them, say, hey, I need help. I've got a counteroffer. Here's where we're at. Can somebody help me out with this? And any AM can step in and grab it and help them out with the underwriting, give them the counteroffer so that they can move forward with that. So the AM and PF act as a team to be able to take that to the closing table. So that the entire payout for the PF was 13, and for the AM, the PF was 11 and the AM was 13. Now the PF is 13 and the AM is 15. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? So everyone, the AM and the PF gets a pay raise. and we'll get to Dispo in a minute. They both get a 2% pay raise, 11 to 13 and 13 to 15. And the flow should stay stronger to keep, to be able to negotiate and close this. So questions. I'm sure there's got to be some questions about these adjustments. D, at what point do we enter the property into the CRM so we aren't bidding against each other? Right away, D, as soon as you start on a property, we want to get it in there to make sure that you've locked it down and nobody else is bidding against you. You don't have to wait for them to counter back. You don't have to wait until you actually submit your initial 50% offer. Just go ahead and get it in there so that it's called for. You basically called for it. It's yours. Jennifer, I struggle to build rapport in the short call that it takes to get the info from the agent. Okay, yeah. So, if you needed a little longer call, that is totally fine, Jennifer. The idea behind the rapport building, you don't have to ask them about their aunt or their favorite sport or anything like that. The idea behind it is just having, a friendly conversation about the property, about who you are, about what you're, that you want to see if this might be a good fit, and ask them if they've been doing this a long time. Anytime you can get them to provide, an opportunity to compliment them. So if you ask them a little bit about themselves and how long they've been doing this, and do they work with investors, when you start getting that input back, that provides rapport, because now you can compliment them. It gives you something about them to compliment, something personal, not necessarily about them as a person, as their, their family or whatever, but perhaps about their work, about their profession. So, typically when you're dealing with these properties that are, they're investor type properties, they will probably be working with investors or have some knowledge of that, because they're representing a house that needs an investor. Not always, but try to get that input from them. If they're like, no, this is my first property that is an investor property, you could tell them, wow, that's pretty good. You must be pretty diversified, or something to compliment them, get them to open up and talk to them for a few minutes to build that rapport without just going straight to business. But there are other personality types that they just want to, they're the alpha type. They want to go straight to the business. They don't want to mess around with casual. So that's what you want to be with them too. You want to try to match whatever their personality type is. For some of us, that's easier than others. For some of it's harder than others. So, Jennifer, it's a skill set that you have to practice to build. Does that answer your question, Jennifer? You're not alone. I'm not naturally a phone type person, so it's a struggle for me too. Some of us, like Pace, he's a natural guy on the phone to the sales front of it. I'm more of a back end guy, but I hear where you're coming from, Jennifer. But the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. D, do you want us to enter notes and provide a status as we work the property, or just make our first contact when we receive the counter? Absolutely, D. So in the backside, Mike Jones and Pri and Alex are working on the forms to be able to enter the data into the CRM. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do it straight through the CRM, but the challenge there, if you create the card in the CRM, you might enter just minimal data. It allows you to enter minimal data, and then things get forgotten. And whatever conversations were there, whatever points you want to remember to refer back to, could be lost. So we prefer everything right in the CRM, so no information is lost. What they're also building is a form, so that you can enter your information through the form, which will guide you step by step to gather all the information that you need to make sure nothing important was forgotten. And, you know, it'll also make sure that you ask the right questions, the 4-pillar questions, to gather all the data about this property that you need to gather. And during that process of gathering that information, you're also building rapport simultaneously. So yeah, whatever you can put straight into the CRM, either via the form or via the internal property card, that's perfect. Cool. We hope everyone likes it. You know, we're trying to create a flow that's not broken and keep that rapport going and pay everyone more. So as far as the DMs go, with the go for no method, with the current market, disposition, it's harder than it ever has been. And the reason is because there's less buyers out there, and the buyers that are out there are more picky. So we might have to actually go higher than the 70%. So a lot of wholesalers are going higher than the 70%. A lot of buyers are going lower than the 70%. That means that it's more work on the dispo side in order to get a job done. So the dispose percentage is going up to 20%. So, you know, we're trying to reward everyone appropriately according to, number one, the amount of work that they're accomplishing. Number two, the expertise that they're bringing to the table and their skill set. So, you know, as the progression goes along, as you progress from property finder to acquisition manager to dispo, your percentage will go up and up and up. And, you know, there's work behind every single role, but we tried to break it out to make it appropriate for each role. Andrea.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Let me answer Andrea's question. You had a question too, Pamela?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Are there any instructions on how to use the CRM and how to move a property through the CRM? Who's responsible for updating the CRM and as the deal progresses? So, Andrea, there will be instructions. We'll be providing some of our own help. We don't want you to have to go out there and spend hours Googling something, or, you know, we're using this for a very specific flow. We're not necessarily, at least not now, using it for, you know, REI Reply was built around the concept of text messaging, ringless voicemail. We're not using those features at this point in time. There is a help built into it, and you can definitely use the helps that are built into the CRM. But we want to be able to provide you streamlined help for our process, and we'll get there. As far as the deal progress, the nice thing about REI Reply, unlike RE Simply, you can have as many columns in the Kanban as you want. So as you progress it from column 1 to column 2 to column 3, we can build those columns and then nomenclature, the name of those columns, to match our process exactly. So we can move it, you know, as you progress the deal from column 1 to column 2 to column 3, we can name those columns appropriately, and you just drag and drop from column 1 to column 2. And then when it goes to the next step, column 2 to column 3. And we can make sure that the process matches the columns. And that's one of the things that Mike Jones and Pri and Alex are working on in the backside, is to make sure that that Kanban flow, the column flow, is smooth and it represents every step, so that we know every property where it's at in the process and it doesn't get lost. And if there's any, you know, we can have specific columns set up for, you know, needing, for example, let's say it's a PF, it's in the PF role. They just received the counteroffer. You know, they've already put in their offer. They just get the counteroffer, and now they need some AM help. They can move it to a column that's specifically for that. So if it goes into that column saying, you know, AM, please help, then, you know, need underwriter or whatever, then any AM can see what's in that column and pick up the card, claim it, move it to the next column. So it's out of that queue. It's kind of like a queue column, move it to the next column, and then be able to handle it from there. nomenclatures, exactly what steps they are. They're working on that. They're going to break that out and make it clear. But that's the idea behind it, is that it's super easy to know the flow and just move it, slide it from one column to the next to the next. Does that answer your question, Andrea? Okay, great. All right, so now I think, who was this that had a question? Pamela, you had a question, right?
Yeah, Ralph, thank you.
You bet.
I watched the replay from last week's training, and I guess I just need a little clarification about the positions, because it sounded like you were breaking down the walls and we could go anywhere in the country, except I guess there are a few places I'd like to talk to you about that too, that you probably don't want us to spend our time in. But as far as the positions go, I thought that you were kind of giving all of us a little more reach. So in other words, if we're a property finder, we find the property, we comp it, we underwrite it, we reach out to the agent, we make the first offer, then we go to wait for the counter offer. That's a lot of work. And actually I'm kind of excited about trying that out. And but as far as if you've gotten to the counter offer and you get a counter offer back and it looks pretty good, I mean, what I thought we would be able to do the acquisition part as well, because you're almost there anyway.
Yeah, you know, Andrea, people are different skill sets. I mean, Pamela, people are different skill sets, and some of them are ready to take on, you know, the underwriting element, and some of them aren't. So the initial offer, you do not have to have a lot of skills to be able to create that initial offer. It can be a ballpark. So you don't have to, you know, the level of expertise is different. If you're, Pamela, if you're at the level where you're used to underwriting, you're used to figuring out the ARV and the construction costs, and you're ready to do that negotiating, you know, we can, that's basically the position of the AM. So we can talk about that and just basically allow, you know, presuming that you are qualified to do that, allow you to do the whole PF and AM job. Does that answer your question, Pamela?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we can talk about it.
We just want to make sure that, you know, some people, they may feel they're ready, but then when the rubber hits the road, there's a little bit of rubber missing. Does that make sense? So we don't want to make sure that, you know, we kind of pre-qualify people for AM that have actually done deals, that have actually got some experience under their belt. So if that's you and you're not an AM at this point, we can discuss that for certain.
Okay, let me ask you this. If let's just say, for instance, the property finder did all that work and the counter offer came back and the AM looked at it and say, it looks great. What's the next step for the acquisition manager?
Yeah, well, to start with, them saying, yeah, that's great is probably rare. Typically what we're going to have to do is counter back to their counter offer. So,
okay, but the property finder could do that, right?
Yeah, the AM is going to provide the property finder with what the next counter should be. Let me just give you a scenario. Let's say that where we could land is at, I'm going to use a percentages instead of actual numbers. We want to land at about 70%. Maybe we'll be more, maybe we'll be less, but the goal is to land in that 70% range. If we need to go up to 76, 77, you know, that's like max is maybe 77, 78%. And it kind of depends on the market and the circumstance of the house. We can go higher on a house that needs little repair. We have to go lower on a house that needs a lot of repair. But let's say that 70% is the target. So if we do the 50% calculation, the ARV can be off. Let's say the ARV is off by 6, 7, 8%. And then they do the calculation for the construction, and that's off another 5%. So all in all, we're 10, maybe 15% off. So when we go with that initial lowball offer at 50%, let's say we're 13% off. Now, instead of being 50, it's actually 63 because we're in error. Well, that 63% is still a safe offer, right? So there's room for error in this 50% offer. If you're too high or too low, it's just a ballpark offer. But when they come back, their mind initially is probably in the 90% range, which is also unrealistic. We can't do a 90% deal, but they come in at 90. They may list it at 100 because they want to get to 90. So their counter might be at 90. Their counter might be at 80. But what the chances of their counter being at 70, like we need them to be, is probably pretty slim. So when we come back with that counter, let's say that the initial PF thought they're doing 50, but they're really doing 63%. Well, the AM, the one that's more qualified for the actual underwriting, they're going to come back and say, your 50% was really at 63. So what we need to do is counter back to them at 70, or, this place isn't so bad. We can actually offer them a little bit more. Let's counter back at 73 or 75, but they'll provide that number that makes sense to counter back based off of their more thorough and experienced underwriting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically, I think what you're saying to me is that the acquisition manager is not going to have any contact with the agent. We're going to do all that, the property finders.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that way you can just keep that rapport moving forward instead of having to transfer from one person to the next.
Gotcha.
And you can allow your underwriter to be the bad guy.
Thanks, Ralph.
You bet. All right, so let's see, D, the final underwriting and offer would need to be run by the AM and or approved by you. Yeah, final underwriting AM. At some point, we need to ensure that we agree on the ARV once the counter comes in. So yeah, again, the underwriter, that's the first step of the underwriting is to figure out the ARV. And when the underwriter picks it up, once you receive the counter, then that underwriter will be able to provide that, those details. This is the ARV, this is the construction cost, and this is where we need to be for our counter back to them. Does that answer the question, D? Great. And I want everyone to remember the whole idea that we came into this with is to help people progress. So the baby elephants that come in, the ones that lack experience, the ones that never done deals, they start out as a PF, but the idea is to grow to become an AM. The walls are down now so that if they're ready for that, if somebody has experience under their belt, and some people that had done deals, they just wanted to start out as a PF. And I don't remember offhand who those people are. So if that's you and you're still doing PF, even though you're qualified to do an AM, come talk to us because we don't want to hold you back. The whole idea is to help everyone to progress. And this actually helps people without experience to be in a position to progress because now they can see the whole process a little bit better than they could before. It's not just handed off and they move on to the next property and they lose track of it. Now they can learn through the negotiation process to more quickly grow into an AM position. That's what we want. We want everyone to be able to grow and progress. So whether you're, if you're an AM already, you can do PF work, you can do AM work, you can get paid for both. If you're a PF and you're ready to become an AM, we can make that happen. If you're a PF and you're not ready, we want you to get ready. That's the whole idea behind this, is to help people to progress and grow, and we can get more people in the door that can take on the PF work. But what we don't want is people that don't take action. The people that are here now, a lot of people have left, but you guys are the ones that take action. And we want to keep that in our little community. We don't want, to flood the gates with a bunch of people that are not taking action or don't know what they're doing at all. We built a little, we've gone through some bumps, right? But we're still here. We're not giving up. and we're making adjustments to make this work. And so these adjustments we feel will be very helpful, because the problems that we faced is that there's some disconnect issues going on. And this will allow that disconnect issue to be gone. So now the PF, they can know. One of the concerns before is the PF was like, well, I don't know if somebody's picking up my property or not. I don't know what's going on with it. Now you'll know exactly what's going on with it. You'll be more in control, and you'll make sure that all your work that you put into it in putting in that initial offer is not lost. And you can make sure, you know, that you're working directly with an AM, you're in control, you can talk to them, you can learn from the AM, from their experience, and get to that next seat of AM as soon as possible. So,
Ralph,
yeah.
I have another question. As far as the acquisition fee, or the fee, the wholesale fee, how much do you want us to put into that when we figure out what's going on with the property?
Yeah, so 15 is our typical number.
Okay.
You know, when you're doing your initial calculation, the AM can adjust that as needed, but you know, nationwide the number is 15K. And I said, I don't know if I remember if I said 15%, but it's 15K, not 15%. So we're gonna, you know, try to stick with that 15%. If we need to drop to 10, we can drop to 10. If we need to drop even further, you know, let's say we're on the dispo side, the idea in acquisition is we keep it at 15. And then on dispo, we try to keep it at 15 as well. But if they need to drop it down less to make the deal happen, then that's what's going to happen, so we don't lose the deal. It's better to get 10K than nothing. It's better to get 5K than nothing. The goal is 15. But you know, if we negotiate at 15, it gives us a little bit of wiggle room in case we have to drop later.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. D came in a little bit late, but is there still a reporting structure, or are we going to work with any AM who takes on our counter? So I'm not sure what you mean by reporting structure. I think you're talking about KPI, D. So REI reply, I don't know yet. I'm still learning it, and maybe Alex can help with that. Alex is kind of the lead on the you know, on the CRM side, and behind him is Pri, his wife, and Mike Jones. Mike is the tech guy, right? So he does all of the administrative stuff in the background. I'm not the one to answer that. We'll let Mike answer that. And I'm sorry, Alex, I don't think Mike is here today, but Alex. And then also, are we to work with any AM who takes on our counter? I used to have one AM. So D, now with the walls gone, we want to make sure that your property, you're not stuck waiting on your particular AM. If they're not available, they're on vacation, they're sick or whatever, any AM can step up and grab it. Some AMs are, you know, they're more comfortable with certain markets. Maybe they're used to a certain market. Others are very flexible, and you know, they can work with any market. So you want to do Indianapolis, you want to do Memphis or some other city, they can help you out. So you're not stuck to just one. More flexibility. But if you have one you like to work with, and you get it into the queue, you can call that AM up and say, hey, can you take this on? I'd love to work with you on that. And that AM can go in there and grab it, and it can become theirs. Right on.
Ralph?
Yeah.
Yeah, another question. What areas do you want to stay away from? Have you figured that out?
Well, the primary one is North Carolina, because of the challenges of the due diligence. If you're doing on market, if you're doing off market, North Carolina is great. You know, but with FSBO, you can do off market, for sale by owner. If you do expired listings, again, off market. If you have your own list that you pulled, if you're driving for dollars, all that's off market. North Carolina is wonderful. But for on market, North Carolina has this silly thing where they've trained everybody to think that you have to have a non-refundable due diligence. And we can't do that as wholesalers because we can't be losing money every time we lock up a potential property. When half the properties, typically 50% of the properties don't close. So that's just, as a wholesaling, it makes it really challenging. If you talk to an agent and they're fine with a no due diligence, that we can do North Carolina. Other markets can be very challenging. New York, California, deals can still be had there, but the numbers are just a little bit harder. So not necessarily saying no to them, but I'm telling you up front, those markets are more challenging than other markets. Typically, when you're dealing with there's a bell curve that is across the board. So you want a market that's in the top of this bell curve. So on the bottom side of the bell curve is the super cheap houses. There's not a lot of profit in it. And the top of the curve is where your most of your houses are at countrywide, 300K range. And then on the bottom side of the bell curve, on the back side, are the high-end houses, 800,000, $1 million, and they're more risky and challenging. So, there's not as many buyers, there's not as many flippers for those high-end houses. So you want to be in the middle range, the 300K range, maybe 200, maybe 400. But once you get out to the far ends of it, if you're trying to do a house that's only worth $100,000 after repair value, it's just harder to wholesale and get a fee out of it. If you're trying to do a house that's on the high end, $1 million house, we can make a nice wholesale fee out of it. And there's buyers for those, but there's not as many buyers for those. So the top of the bell curve is where you have your most buyer pool, and it's easier to find those deals, easier to find the deals because there's more of them and there's more buyers, so it's easier to dispo. And when you get out to the bottom side, it's either too high or too low, it's just more challenging. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what about duplexes or triplex or even a fourplex?
Yeah, those are definitely game. It can be even more than a fourplex. When you get into multifamily, whether it be residential, meaning 2 to 4, or commercial 5 and up, there's more involved with underwriting because you're dealing now with, is it cash flowing? What's my cash on cash return, right? How much am I going to have to put in? How long am I going to have to wait before I get this thing to cash flow? So it's a little bit different scenario than with a retail house. A retail house, you have a home buyer that's going to live in it, right? And all you're dealing with is comps. You're not dealing with cash flow issues. But that said, we have AMs that are qualified to run the comps for multifamily, either residential or commercial. And, as well, myself and Alex and others that are in here can handle those. So if you run across a good opportunity there, go for it. We can give you the support you need and make that deal happen.
What about properties that you could turn into Airbnb?
Yeah, those are good properties too. Airbnb is a little bit more finicky right now, but they're definitely available. It's just, before it used to be, you can throw an Airbnb up anywhere, but now it's gotta be the right location, and it's gotta stand out in a better way than the competition. So Airbnb is still something that you can go after, but again, it's going to fall back on the buyers, or I should say on the dispo side, to find an Airbnb buyer. Or perhaps, Mike or somebody within our 4 walls might want to pick it up. Maybe I don't know your position, but if somebody within here wants to pick it up, we need every team member to be paid their portion for the work they accomplished. So even if the buyer is within our 4 walls, we want to make sure that wholesale fee is paid out. But Airbnb, long-term rentals, midterm rentals, they're all, the walls are down. We can do all that. And we have people qualified to help make those, the comps behind short-term rental like Airbnb is different than midterm and is different than long-term and is different than a retail home, right? But
Right.
the expertise is here to get that done. So don't be afraid to go after it, and we can provide the support you need to make that happen.
One more question. What about states like Illinois that you have to do a double closing for wholesale?
Yeah, Dee just wrote the same question. Illinois requires a real estate license to assign contracts after your first deal.
I think it was, I thought it was 2. Really? 1?
I don't know. She just said requires a real estate license. So
After the
after
first 2
your
deals.
first deal, what you're saying is requires, what did you say about the double close, Pamela?
Well, what I've read anyway is that the way to get around it is to do double closings.
Okay, yeah. So there are ways around. Okay, I see what you're saying. So Dee and you might be saying the exact same thing. Basically, you need a license if you're not the end buyer, but the way around it is to be the end buyer and double close, right?
Yeah,
So now
yeah.
you're the end buyer and just giving it to somebody else. So that is one way around it. So the numbers, if the numbers work, we can do a double close. You know,
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. All right.
yeah, there's transactional funding to make that happen.
Okay.
But the numbers got to work, right? There's got to be room. You have a little bit more percentages that are taken out for the transactional funding when you're doing a double close, as well as the closing itself. But that's definitely possible if, you know, if the numbers make sense.
What would those percentages be for those 2 transactions, the transactional funding and the closing?
You know, when it comes to the funding and the closing, it kind of depends on the deal. And I don't know Illinois market myself. I don't know exactly what it would take to do the double close. You know, typically you're going to have maybe 3 to 6% in the second closing. I can't say for certain what that would be in Illinois.
Yeah, well, it's just going to be all more on the fee side. To double close, you're just going to have more fees. That's why your deals, when you're doing them, they have to be a little bit larger. So if you find a $10,000 deal or $8,000 deal, you're going to have to understand that you're going to be paying more fees on that money when you double close from each side is all.
Yeah. So maybe around 10%, just
Yeah.
add on about
Yeah,
10%
that's it.
in general. Okay.
Yeah, you know, and if it's a big number that needs to be double closed. So let's say, for example, it's a house that needs a lot of repair. So you're getting it super low price because of all the repairs it needs. The transactional funding is very low compared to a house that's almost retail ready, like a lipstick or cosmetic. That transactional funding will be a bigger percent because of the status of the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a
You
lot.
bet. All right. Hold on one second here. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Any more questions about what we've talked over?
Yeah, I got a few questions. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, Ray, go for it.
Okay, so first one, okay, so is the property finder still framing and presenting themselves as the investor and the cash buyer, or are they acting as a part of a team? So how are they coming in to this initial conversation? And there's a reason I'm asking that specifically.
My take is I never want to misrepresent myself as the end buyer, but coming in as part of a team, we do have end buyers in our team. So, you know, you can feel free to say we, you know, may end up buying this ourselves, or we may, if it's not a fit for us, we have partners that will probably want it. You know, we work with a team. You could also say we have, you know, we work for some flippers, and we're trying to find some properties that are a fit for our flippers. Because in all reality, that's what we're doing. You know, we are a marketing arm for fix and flippers primarily. And I'm presuming this is a fix and flip type property. If it's a property that's a cash flow property, then you could say we work for landlords and we're trying to find them a good deal, right? We're trying to find a fit. So you can represent yourself as a marketing arm for whoever will be the end buyer, or you can say we may pick it up ourselves, or if not, we have, you know, we have others that we are connected with, that we work with, that we can take this to.
Yeah,
But-
okay. Yeah, I was just asking because, like, okay, so in my own market, you know, I'm the investor, so I'm not, you know, I may have partners and I may have, you know, other people in my LLC, or we may, you know, have, you know, like a team or whatever, but I usually just like, hey, I'm the investor, which I was just curious as to,
Yeah,
if
that's a
you're
perfect way of saying it,
right.
that you're an investor.
Yeah, if you're, because technically you are, wholesaling is just an exit strategy. But the thing is, I was just wondering, how is that like low ball offer gonna come off if you're not, because if you're the low ball offer, you're the investor because you've got a number in your head, like you're calculating, okay, so I've got to commence this number of repairs. I got to put it back on the market. I got to pay the agent. It may sit on the market when the flip is over 3-4 months from now, you know, maybe the market has declined a little bit further. So I'm just saying, like, when you're talking like that and you have that ability to talk, then that kind of, like you were talking about with the rapport building, that kind of frames your lowball offer rather than just some random
Yeah.
person throwing out a lowball offer without that context behind it. Like, hey, I'm an investor and I'm doing the math, you know, I'm in this for a profit. You know, I've got an idea what materials and labor are going to cost. I got an idea what, you know, blah, 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 what it's going to take to sell this in 3 months or whatever. So I was just curious about that. I'm not saying it wouldn't work
No,
the other
that's,
way, but yeah.
yeah, you're right,
Ray,
Ray.
Yeah,
That-
Ray, the way that you discuss that, Ray, that's exactly what the AMs are doing, because sometimes the PFs can't word it like that, or they don't have enough
Right.
experience to talk like that. So when they do the initial offer, that's why we're saying that when we're in there to help them out. So when they say that they had this offer, okay, I'm gonna talk to my AM, that's when they come to you or anybody that's in an AM position to have that conversation just like that. So here's why we're offering it. Here's our numbers and here's why. So it makes it a
Correct.
little bit easier. So now when the property finders get better at it, they'll be in that same position to have those conversations.
Yeah, and you can hop on a call with your PFs and, you know, have
Yes.
it two-way. That
But
way
Yeah,
your experience can shine through and help out the PF even more
yeah.
in those
Correct.
phone calls.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but the earlier part of the Zoom, we were talking about the rapport staying with the PF. So
Yes,
that
100%.
rapport has got to get transferred. And actually, I'm kind of rusty on it now, but there are ways that I studied a while ago there are techniques you can use, which we don't need to get into on this Zoom, but there are techniques you can use to seed the initial conversation to where you can transfer the rapport
Yeah,
from the initial contact to the closer, because you know they do that in sales, like big time
yeah,
salespeople, like
Correct.
the closer. So there are different techniques, but we don't need to get into that right
Yeah.
here. But you can transfer rapport, but you just got to
100%.
seed the initial conversation in a certain way. But yeah,
100%.
right, we'll talk about that another time. But then the other question that I was going to ask, let's see, I was taking a couple of notes. Okay, so another thing about building that rapport is having some basic market knowledge, right? Because you can say, well, yeah, you know, this is how Indy or this is how Jacksonville's going, and you know, we doing this or we're seeing that. So if PFs and AMs are bouncing all over the map and all kind of markets and all over the place, you know, so is that going to be a challenge in building that rapport and sounding like a serious, informed investor if, you know, it's just because, you know, we were focused on just a few markets at first, you know. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious about Like, like for Florida, we were talking about, hurricanes and wood frames and, all these different things, and where the market hadn't corrected as much in Florida as other places. So that, that kind of just market knowledge. So I'm just wondering, is it going to be a struggle to build that rapport with agents and with sellers if we're just bouncing all over the place? And
As far as an
you know,
AM's perspective, you mean?
or the PF, because they're going to have the initial contact. So
Yeah. So as far as a PF goes, the idea is not that they're bouncing across the United States from one city to the next to the next. The idea is that we're allowing PFs to go into an area that they may be more comfortable with. Maybe they're already working, a particular region, and they know that region. Maybe they live in that region, or they've just been wholesaling in that region. So that allows them, we can spread out a little bit so we're not so cramped in a certain area, and it allows people to work an area that they're already familiar with.
Okay.
From an AM perspective, yeah, it could actually be more challenging because now an AM, instead of just being in one market, you might be working a few markets based off of where the PFs are at. It's a challenge that we might have to face.
It's all about, like you said, that I watched that Go for No video, and I heard that before, and I appreciate you giving us that tool. I watched it actually a couple times. So the basis, like the guy Rick Ginn was saying, is that rapport. So all these things, if you're going to be throwing out that low ball offer, you got to build that rapport. So that rapport is like, hey, this is my challenge. This is my challenges. I'm an investor. This is how I got to make a profit. This is how the market is correcting. This is what stuff. So, that's just basically, so all these questions are basically about rapport building in order to make that low ball offer, and transferring it to the AM, transferring the rapport to them if they need to step in.
Yeah,
negotiate.
100%.
So wanted to touch on those, but they're not, none of these challenges are insurmountable. I just wanted to kind of highlight them.
That's the only thing that's going to separate out your lowball offer from the next guy's lowball offer is the rapport.
Right.
So, there's all kinds of people putting in lowball offers, but the two things that are required is, number one, rapport building, number two, follow-up. So, when that no comes in, they have to go back and say, what would work for you, or what would work for your seller. If we don't follow up, it just ends in a no, right? So that has to happen. We have to have that rapport strong, and we have to have the follow-up strong to make this go for no thing work. And really, even if we weren't doing the go for no, even if we just did 10% below where we need to be, then that, like we were doing before, the follow-up is extremely important, because you won't get deals without follow-up. We're running out of time. Let me jump over to the next thing on here is creative deals and option contracts. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the value in the market we're in, being a little bit more creative and thinking out of the box. So, the idea behind a cash offer is that's typically where people want to be and what they understand, but it's not necessarily the only solution. So when you're negotiating, let's say we go for the 50%, they go for 90, we come in at 70, they come in at 80, we come in at 75, and they're like, no, 80 is as far as we can go. Well, if the gap is still too far away and we can't get to where we need to be with cash, then we don't want to just end it there. We want to say, there's other things that we can do to probably bring our number up, but it's we want to see if this will work for your client, or if this will work for you. Let me pull in one of my teammates that is more experienced in this, and let's talk about the other options. It could be seller finance, it could be a subject to, could be a novation agreement. and it's going to depend on the deal. So it's going to depend on their circumstances, what does and does not work for them. But that can squeeze out 5, 6, 7% by those creative type deals. And then another thing to keep in mind is what's called an option contract, an exclusive option contract. So an option contract, basically, it allows you to step back and say, you know, the numbers aren't quite good enough for us. We're not your buyer, but we have some buyers that we work with, some end buyers that may be interested in this deal. How about we do an option contract for, give me 10, 15 days to try to close this deal out. And then we can go ahead and lock it up under that option contract. And then Dispo can go out and try to find an end buyer that, you know, can meet their goal. So let's say that they're at 80 and they can't go lower than 80. And we know 80 is just not quite in the realm. Lock it up at 80 with an option contract, not with a purchase and sale agreement, but an option contract. And then once it's locked up at 80, you all of a sudden change from being in the position of the buyer or the buyer's representative to being on their team. They view you differently because you're basically signing an agreement to allow you to market their property. So now they're going to be a little bit more forthcoming with their information to tell you what's going on. And you can be more forthcoming with the information from the potential buyers. So Dispo can take it. They can take it to buyers. The buyer's feedback might be, no, I can't do that number. I need it to be, and then they'll come back with the 70% number, 74% number, maybe 76% number. So you can go back to them and, you know, say, yeah, well, so far we've got an offer at 70, 71, 72. And, you know, you're not going to give a percent, right? You're going to give an actual number, 150, 155, 156. And they're like, no, it's just not far enough. Okay, let me keep at it and I'll be back with, you know, some more potentials. So then you go out and you come back again and then you get someone that's at 75%. And so you come back to them and say, okay, I got one at 165. This is the highest offer I can come up with. What do you think? Can we make this happen? And then that allows us to actually negotiate in that range. You know, we're at 70% and they're at 80 and they won't go down. If we lock it up with an option contract, now we can go ahead and continue that negotiating process through our dispos. So the dispos can come back and tell us exactly where the buyers are at. We can engage the buyers and give that feedback. And now we can work that middle range between 70, 80, and hopefully lock it down as close to 70 as possible. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm not getting a yes or a no. So any questions about that process? You know, when it comes to creative, there's a lot of information there, a lot of opportunities and ideas, and it's kind of a one-by-one basis. But the idea here that we're saying is if we're not quite there, there's options. We can either do some form of creative or we can do an option contract and lock it up so that we can continue with that potential and not just let it go because we're 10% off. You know, if we're 30% off, it's probably just not going to happen. And we don't want to waste time where it's not going to happen. But if we're negotiating and we got them down to here and we're up to here and we just can't quite get where we need to be, don't let it go. Either take a creative route or take an option contract route so that we can hopefully make this deal happen instead of just letting it go. Any questions about that?
If anybody doesn't even know what an option contract is or what it looks like or whatever, you can reach out to me in a Discord or give me a call and I can go over with you later as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do an actual option contract as a separate piece of paper.
Right.
Some people just take the initial PSA. That's what Pace does. He takes the PSA and he puts a clause at the bottom, which basically turns it into an option contract. But it's basically just an agreement to allow you to market their property and it's, you know, for X number of days without you being committed to buy it. It gives you that option to purchase instead of being required to purchase.
Correct.
So D says options would be for off market only. No, it can be for on market, D. For certain.
Anything.
So it's an agreement. You know, if it's not going to be for your on market where it's only been on the market for a month, your agent's going to be like, no, that's my job, right? But if the agent's had this property for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, they're going to be open to help because they want to get this thing moved too. And they're starting to look bad in their client's eyes because their timeline is running out and they want to get this property moved and onto the next property. So they can, you know, many times be receptive, not initially, but after a little bit of time has passed. Pamela, would you send us a list of the team members and their positions? Yeah, so Pamela, are you looking in particular for the AMs? Because you're a PF, right, Pamela?
Yes, I am. Yeah, it would just be nice to know the other PFs as well. And yeah, what acquisition, because we don't, I'm sure a lot of new people have come aboard and we don't know who they are.
Sure.
When they pick up our properties or whatever, at least we'll have an idea of their names. And
yeah. So another thing that we're doing, Pamela, that will help there is we're going to actually switch over to a new Discord server. And with our new arrangement, there's, you know, right now our current Discord server is set up where there's an Atlanta market and there's, you know, a DFW market and a Central Florida market. And a lot of them can only see what's in that market. So the new server is going to be set up to where those walls are gone. And you'll be able to see everybody in the new server. And it, you know, right now there's still some people in the server that have already left. So the new server will only have active people and it'll be very clear who's who.
Yeah, it'll just have a dispositions, acquisitions, and a property finders. So there won't be 20 different areas that you can go in. So if you just want to see your property finders, you can communicate with them. If you want to communicate with your AMs, you can do the same as well. And so it'll just be a lot cleaner and a lot easier to use.
thank you. That's great.
You bet. We've gone a little bit of overtime, not too much. And I apologize. You know, I was at my mother-in-law's and we had a problem getting back. So I ended up getting it back late. So sorry for holding everybody up beyond the hour, but we're close, right?
Yeah. And I will send that link in the company-wide chat for everybody to join the new server here shortly.
Haley said, just to clarify, if we do off market, we are paying for our leads, right? Yeah, at this point, Haley, we don't have an arrangement to pay for leads, but we're working in that direction to where we can give some assistance. What we're challenged with at the moment is that if we pay for leads, pay for skip tracing, and then that list doesn't get worked, you know, it's just a lot of money down the drain. You can spend literally thousands of dollars in leads, and we want to make sure that money is, you know, if we have people that are doing deals, they've got experience, they know what they're doing, right? They've proven themselves on the phone, they've negotiated, they're closed. That's where we're going to start spending money on leads, but it has to make sense. We're all game for helping out in ways like that, but it's got to make financial sense on our side as well.
Ralph, may I say something about that?
Yeah.
If you have Privy, you can find off-market leads on Privy. There are videos and articles you can look it up and figure out how to do that.
Yes.
And then to skip trace, True People Search is one area, and Fast People Search. True People Search is pretty good, actually. And that's all for me. So.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela. 100% behind what Pamela said there. So Haley, if you want help with that, you know, you can coordinate with Pamela, or you can ask us. We can help you out with those resources as well on how to find those resources, the free resources, and use them. But
Yeah,
we
it
do
just takes,
appreciate
it just
that
takes a lot more work, that's all,
feedback.
but it can be done.
And one of the best, the time stood methods that work even in today's market are driving for dollars and cold calling. And those methods will probably continue to work for decades in front of us. It's not something that a lot of people want to do, but it works. You will get deals done. So if you want to do off market, FSBO works. Going to Craigslist, finding deals on Craigslist works. Driving for dollars and finding deals in your neighborhood works. Going to Privy, and if you have Privy, which most of us do, then you can find deals within Privy.
Mhm.
Or what was the other thing? FSBO. Did I say FSBO? Yeah. Work in FSBO through Zillow, through Privy, and other areas. Those are great opportunities to find deals without having to pay for the leads. You can also get lists. You can download lists or go to a closing, what do you call it? A closing attorney. In North Carolina, it's attorney, but in other areas, it's a title company, right?
Title company, yeah.
Yeah, and they can give you lists that will help you. You want to find people that are distressed. Either the house is distressed or the people are distressed. So there's opportunities to get those for free as well. As far as providing them, we're going to do that on a case per case basis based off of people that are taking action and making deals happen. We'll provide those lists for, from us to you for free. But as far as like company wide, when it comes to providing a list for everybody, we need to be in a position to both financially and organizationally so that all the resources are in place to be able to work a list, make the phone calls. You either have to work. Oh, another area that's really good to get lists is what's called virtual driving for dollars. You can go down, the street in your market, wherever there's fix and flips happening, and you can look in Privy to find that area. Go into Google Maps, stick the little man there and have him walk the street. And as you're driving down that street, you can see the distressed houses. And then you find that distressed house, you find the buyer, you find their phone number, you call them up. That's a great free way to do a drive for dollar. You don't have to pay for gas. We can do another Zoom another time later to go over that method, all the methods for off market that are free. We don't have time today, but we can definitely explore that and help everybody out with off market free methods. And then later on, we want to provide that resource, but in particular for those that are doing deals and learning and growing.
I think I have a list with a lot of that stuff on it. Let me see if I can find it in my downloads. And it just has a lot of different ways to find deals. So I'll just make that a resource for us and post it in the chat as soon as I get it.
So thank you everyone for being here and for staying through the bumps. So every change we make, we're trying to help out, to smooth out some of the bumps that we've run across and to give you guys what you need to make things happen. So please provide the feedback on how it's working, what challenges you have. With these different adjustments, it could present a new challenge that's unexpected, right? But we want to address those challenges and make things as smooth as possible. They'll have the CRM out soon. Alex and his team is working on that. So stay tuned. We'll get that out as soon as possible. We appreciate every single one of you. So thank you for being part of our team and we'll make this happen together.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.